Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the first of our C-suite webinars. We kicked off a leaders advisory board in Eden Smith to build a community. Jane Smith, our head of executive search here on the call, on the webinar, building a community of C-suite leaders, and the shared purpose to try and achieve some kind of success and value from data projects, and to help that community of people, because we get asked a lot of questions around how to do this stuff, data stuff. And I'm very, very happy to welcome two great speakers that we know very well, very experienced in the data space, and introducing Ella Osterberger, previously Director of Data Science over at Deliveroo, currently the Vice President of Data at WeTransfer. So thank you for joining us and agreeing to present today, Ella. And also we have Matt Stewart. And Matt, you've been a data professional for many, many years, background from companies like Baringa Partners, currently the data and insight practice lead over at Embracent. So thanks ever so much for agreeing to present. So what we really want to do today is Matt's going to present for about approximately 15 minutes, and so will Ella. Matt will go first, and we would like it, if possible, because we have a bit of a not time constraint, but we only have an hour today. It would be great if we could have quick Q&A at the end of both those presentations, just to make sure that we get all of the content out. The webinar is being recorded and will be released following this webinar. So welcome. Hello, Esther. Hello, Matt. And hello, Jane. Welcome to everybody on the call. So as I said, we're going to kick off with Matt. Matt, are you good to go?
Yes, I am. Yeah, Krista, can you share that slide that I sent across, please? Cool. Thank you. Good stuff. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so by way of introduction, so just following on from Jez's intro. So yeah, I've been working for 25 years now, which I can't believe, actually. It's flown by. And over that time, I've worked on sort of both within industry and also within consulting, both within sort of advisory and an assurance capacity as well. And sort of over that time, I've worked on big change programs where either there's a big sort of spotlight on data to ensure that you know, the benefits case is realised. Sometimes working on programs whereby new systems have been put in and there's been disruption around the data and the reporting, so there's been more of a recovery aspect to it. I've helped a lot of organisations with sort of data strategies and operating models as well, and also sort of deploying kind of data capabilities, you know, sort of centralised teams and platforms that sort of provide that data and insight. So worked at a lot of different places over 25 years and worked with some fantastic people, and I've learned a lot of things over that time. And what I just thought would be quite useful was just to sort of share some of those learnings with you today. There's so much to talk about, but I've kind of picked these five here that I thought I might just be able to do a quick whistle stop tour through. So yeah, so without further ado, I think, you know, if we think about the topic, so how to preserve business value when embarking on data transformation, you know, the first and sort of foremost thing to do is to really understand what's meant by business value, and kind of the line of sight between business outcomes, the use cases that generate those outcomes, and the data and the information that is needed for those use cases as well. So it's absolutely critical to be able to understand that line of sight between outcomes and the data itself. And obviously, depending on the organisation, those key strategic outcomes can vary, you know, and quite often there's line of sight to the kind of the executive KPI dashboard that's driving performance, and meeting of the kind of the annual plan. You know, there's revenue growth, there's cost optimization, there's protecting your license to operate, there's regulatory compliance, there's sustainability that's coming through. There's so many different kind of drivers for information. It's absolutely critical to understand what the key ones are and how it puts a spotlight on the data. And the other thing that I've learned as well is that, you know, you can get a position around that, but then things can change very quickly. You know, it may be that there's a change in legislation has puts a new spotlight on the data, or a new business transformation program suddenly changes the spotlight on the data as well. So it's really important to be able to understand that the concept of value can change very subtly and very quickly over time. And also sometimes the value is very clear. It might be that there is a burning imperative that puts a spotlight on data. But in other cases, it may be that if you are, for example, a global product management company that's got multiple functions across R&D, manufacturing, retail, supply chain, quality and everything, it might be that there's lots of different use cases that all put the same spotlight on the same element of data. So it's kind of really being very clear on what that is. And kind of to help that, sort of moving on to the second point really, what I've found over the time is that obviously to be able to understand that value, you've got to go out and have conversations with people. But people aren't, or they don't always see data in the way that we do, as I do as a data professional. So what I've learned over the years is to be able to sort of pull together different views of the organisation and the enterprise that can drive the right discussions around data. So for example, at the moment, I work a lot with sort of property companies. So what I tend to do is I kind of map out the asset life cycle or the tenant life cycle, look at all the different key stages and sort of start to get discussions around, well, what are the key sort of data inputs and information outputs as we sort of go through the journey? And you start to build up a picture about what the sort of important data sets are when you're talking to people as well. So yeah, and that's the other challenge I found is that some of the traditional approaches to data modeling don't really lend themselves to do this. So in terms of sort of skills and competencies within your data team, it's always great to have people who almost kind of have that business analysis mindset and also a visualization mindset, and they can kind of bring data to life in a meaningful way that's going to drive the right discussions. Okay, and I think in doing that, you kind of start to surface some of the pain points and opportunities that represent that value as well. So yeah, and so just moving on to the third point, kind of quite closely aligned to this, what you often find is the data of the highest value often is represented by some of the key master data sets in your business as well, whether it be your product master, your customer master, your supplier master, your chart of accounts, your organizational hierarchy. Those kind of that key kind of master data, there's often a huge amount of complexity around it as well. It's made up of hierarchies. It has its own life cycle. And it's also driven by a complex set of business rules that shape that data. And also the data itself is often shaped by the applications that hold it as well, especially if they're older legacy applications. So if you're trying to preserve value as you're transforming your data, it's really, really important to understand the concepts around your data and the business rules that drive it. Because if your data transformation is starting to develop new data products or new reports, those reports have to reflect and understand those complexities and those business rules. And if you can't understand and represent those, when you then try and showcase what, the fruits of your labour around your transformation, people will if it's slightly wrong, it gives people your colleagues a kind of it'll make it harder for them to accept what you're doing, because they kind of think, well, you don't really understand the data in the context of the business, so I'm just going to carry on using my legacy reports. I'm going to keep on using my spreadsheets. So it's just, for me, I think that's one of the sort of the key areas, and also, sort of close to that, you need to understand the lineage of your data in your system of record to your top level KPIs as well, the kind of the facts and the dimensions that sit in it. How is that data transformed from its origins into that dashboard? You've really got to understand that if you're going to kind of preserve the value and be successful within your transformation as well. Okay, and the more global you are and the bigger your organizational footprint, the kind of the harder that is as well. So for me, those kind of those three areas that I've talked about so far, it's about how you kind of understand the data itself in the context of the business. And then once you've got that understanding, it starts to kind of shape your change management approach as well. And for me, it's kind of, you know, when I think about change management around data transformation, you need to paint a vision and a case for change and a target state that you're going to. But if you spend too long doing that, the where you're starting from will change, and you start to kind of, you start to get it, it starts to become harder. But it is important to get that target state and sort of move towards it. But what I've sort of learned over the years is that, data-led transformation can, when you engage with people around it, especially if there's a lot of other transformation that's happening across the business, there's a wariness, there's sort of a reticence to kind of engage in that transformation. So it's really important for me to kind of move things forward on a more iterative scale, because A, it allows you that bit more flexibility to kind of move the dial forward, and B, it also it gives you that it's important to kind of recognise those small step changes that you make. And as you kind of start to make those step changes, as you deploy new capability around data, the other thing that I've learned as well is it's important. It's just as you're deploying new stuff, you need to decommission the old stuff as well, especially if you've got a big spreadsheet culture as well. So as you deploy new reports and new views of your data and new data capability, don't forget to switch off the old as well. But obviously that needs to be managed carefully, because some of the old reports might be business critical, kind of baked into key processes and decision making. So you've got to handle that very, very carefully as well. So yeah, and I think for me the kind of the final point there as well, as you kind of do your transformation, and Ella's going to sort of talk about this a bit more, but there's the need to kind of build that resilient, incentivized and multidiscipline team as well. And the way I've kind of looked at it in recent years is, when you're building new data capability and transforming around data, there's kind of a demand and supply aspect to this as well. Like I've talked about quite a bit so far, the skills you need to engage with the business to understand the demand that represents that value, and understanding your business landscape that you're operating in, and understanding the fact that things are always changing as well. You've got to have the skills and the capabilities to be able to go out and engage with your business and understand that demand and understand that it's going to be quite flexible. I think sort of along with that as well, the importance of aligning your data transformation project with the teams that are overseeing change is really important. So if you've got a central portfolio management office or an enterprise architecture function, make sure your data transformation project is close to that, to be able to understand what the changes are that are coming through that you need to kind of adapt to. From a supply perspective, obviously the skills you need around data transformation in terms of data engineers, the visualization team, the architects, the people that own the platforms, you need to have that skill base, and the architects are key in that, because to that point I said about the sort of the data models and the business rules, you need those skills that can translate the business rules and logic into the actual physical data structures themselves, so that any outputs that you generate are going to be meaningful and accurate from a business perspective. So yeah, and I think probably the last thing to touch on as well, quite often when we talk about data transformation, there's a lot of talk about data governance, about controlling and oversight of your data assets. What I've learned in recent years is that there's just as much of the need on information governance as well. So you think data to information to insight to action, who owns the information and the business rules and the logic around some of the key facts and dimensions that go into your dashboard? Who decides the classification around the information that's being used for different purposes? And who decides ultimately the numbers that you might be producing are the accurate numbers that can be used both internally and potentially externally? And I've found in recent years that there's been a lot of focus on data governance, not quite enough focus on information governance. And if you don't get the information governance right, then it's very difficult to kind of land some of the transformation that you're going for, because the information owners are typically also the sponsors of what you're doing as well, and they need to accept and agree with the kind of the information outputs that you're producing. So yeah. So I think that might be my 15 minutes of time. I think I've stuck with it, and hopefully I've kind of been able to articulate some of those lessons learned. But yeah, very happy to kind of discuss those when we get to the panel bit afterwards as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. That's some really interesting points and some food for thought. So just passing over to Ella then.
Right, thank you so much. Let me just get my screen up. Here we go. Can you see that all right? Yay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, super excited to be here. And I have so much to talk about, so I'll keep an eye on the time to make sure it's only 15 minutes. Basically, what I started with just look at what you actually shared. It's like, what are we gonna talk about today? Can you hear me?
Ella.
I can hear you, Ella, actually, but your slide has been cut off. It's gone portrait for some reason.
Can you see it now?
It was all right at the beginning when you shared previously. I'm not quite sure what's happened there.
Let me try again.
Do
We
we
did
need
a
to get
dry
into
run.
Gotta love.
That's better.
modern
That's
technology.
better. Thank
Yeah.
you.
There we are.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, I'm resisting the multiple screens, and now I think when I have my window squeezed, suddenly it doesn't work. Anyway, I'm glad you can see it now. Okay, so as I said, I'm very excited to talk about so many things that you had in your introduction of this webinar. So I'm going to talk about creating data-driven mindset in the organization, which is like creating maybe more data literacy within the business. Then talking also about like a very specific example of maybe a transformation, a real big change on our data infrastructure and what might go wrong while doing that. So something very concrete. And then very quickly on like, I think one of the biggest learnings I've had while building a data function since I joined WeTransfer over the last few months here. So yeah, 3 topics in 15 minutes. So good luck. So the first one is creating that data-driven mindset. And the title to this slide is I'm meeting you at yours. So I think in order to bring the company along on that journey and making sure that everyone in the company feels really comfortable with using data and understanding the data, you have to understand where the company is at and where everyone in the company is. So I guess the way I see it is there are broadly two cultures. One is the pull culture, where everyone wants all the data and they basically knock at your door every day and say, I want this and this and this. And then there's the push culture, where you need to go like, have you seen that data? Isn't that amazing? And so I think understanding where your company is at is probably quite important before you think about that. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is just assessing the maturity of your data organization. And that's more the maturity of, I guess, your data and insights team. Actually, I have created a Typeform quiz I also work for a venture capital company. And in order to assess the maturity of all their portfolio companies, I created the data quiz. So maybe we can share the link and people it will just, at the end, it will ask you for an email address. So if you don't want to share your email address, maybe don't take the quiz. But if you're curious, do it. But I guess summarizing it very in a very simplified way, there are different stages of companies where you can just observe the data, then you can really understand trends and combine it in an interesting way. Then you'll be able to react to those trends and know exactly what you need to do and maybe what effect it will have. You then again, more mature companies will be able to anticipate any changes and also act accordingly. And you can optimize, which is a lot around like experimentation and really like making sure that all the margins, you tweak everything for it to become even better. And then at the very end, automation, where most of the decisions are actually made by an algorithm or machine learning algorithm. So at Deliveroo, we were very much at the very end. And what does that mean for creating a data-driven culture is helping people interact with machines, as strange as this sounds, but we had a lot of tools that we trained people on using. So for example, how to run your own experiments using the tool we built for you, or given that a machine might make a prediction of what we should do in a market, there were humans that could override what we should be doing. So it's more around like training people how to interact with already very smart algorithms. But actually where I'm now at WeTransfer, we're probably kind of more in the middle bit. So the approach to upskilling people in the company looks a bit different. And so I want to kind of give very concrete examples of what I'm doing at the moment, and maybe some of you might steal some of those. So what I'm starting off with is really sharing a lot of skills and knowledge with everyone in the business. So a big focus for me specifically, but also some people on my team, is running a lot of workshops and sharing facts about all the things that we have already, all the insights we've already generated. So one is, who are our customers and how do they behave? So ideally, by the end of the quarter, everyone who joins the company, but everyone who is at the company already, should have gone through a training to really understand the key facts. What data sources we have and how they work, just so everyone actually is aware how important it is that we have good data quality and feels responsible for delivering that too. How experimentation works. And then actually I'm also running a workshop on like self-serving analytics. Like I teach everyone how to do data visualization, extract data using Google Sheets. And so it's very hands-on half-day workshop, so to help people there. But also I'm trying to share insights in a very creative way. So at WeTransfer, some parts of the organization are more like push. So you still need to encourage them to look at the data. So I'm doing very interactive videos with like lots of colors and pictures and like, did you know that? Maybe we should do this. And people really love that. So it's then getting widely shared just because the format is more interesting for people. Also, we are creating a data council because we need to establish like ethics of how we best use the data of our customers in a very respectful manner, while still allowing the company to be very data driven. And then I guess help everyone measure and communicate success. So in this at the stage we are now, it's less about how to engage well with an algorithm or a machine, but it's really like making sure that the basics everyone has, and they understand how we're performing, they know what data we have, how they can help themselves. Yeah, and so that's the first topic. I'm remember it because there's time for questions at the end, but I'm jumping straight into a completely different topic on like preserving value while embarking on a transformation journey. And I'm gonna, Matt did a really great summary. I'm gonna give a very specific example of something that I've experienced with the team lately. So we are doing a big migration from Redshift to Databricks for the people who know the terms, but basically much more modern, much faster, cheaper, better, cooler, all the things. It's a really, really, really big effort, and it takes quite a few months to land that well. It touches a lot of teams, and that team that is delivering that transformation has so much work because the business as usual doesn't stop. So basically now they have to do double the work, and I can't just hire double the team for 6 months to deliver that and then say bye to them, because also it's the same with contractors. They really need to have the business context to deliver that well. And then the other problem was that everything new is very disruptive. So all the dashboards are breaking. Suddenly the data sources that were used by the team are no longer there. They have to write different code to get the same data. It's very disruptive. And also, who wants to talk about migrations? No one. Like the leadership team isn't interested, right? They just wanted to be there. It's really not a very sexy topic. So it's hard to get buy-in, and it's only ever seen if it breaks, right? The data isn't there. Why isn't the data there? And all the good stuff that happens, actually very, very hard to see. So lessons learned from that: have a very strong comms plan, remind everyone what's going to happen, and keep them updated if any timelines slip. We did try to have certain things outsourced by contractors because it was so difficult to get it done within the team alone, but then it needs to be very specific. so that not much needs to be handed over to the core team. Under promise, over deliver. I do that with everything because that's much healthier way to exist. And then make this a team effort. It's not all on the team who actually delivers it, but there's a lot of support acts making this happen. So really making this feel like everyone who consumes data, who is touching the data, is helping us deliver that, and their feedback is welcome, and they're an active part of making this successful. Have a clear stakeholder map and action plan, so you always know who you need to communicate what to, and how to best, use language that really resonates with them. Celebrate the wins really loudly. As I said, it's very easy to notice things that are going wrong, but actually, when things go right, you need to really shout about it. So, for example, there was something broke on a Friday. The team worked all weekend. So on Monday, the reports were back there. And obviously, no one even notices that things break because the team is so great that they actually do it over the weekend. So I make a point of Monday morning sending out an email to everyone saying, just so you know, things broke, the team worked all weekend, it's amazing, please say thanks, and really make sure that also the things that might not get seen otherwise are widely communicated. Invest in the team and their well-being. We are doing a lot of socials at the moment, more than we usually do. Go like, you've done really well, let's grab a drink, or let's go to they love going to the arcade, or whatever it is that works for your team. Make sure they spend a lot of quality time with each other. And then I think always have their back. I come to that again later too. But what I find was interesting is I'm usually quite a calm person, and I'm always like, oh, we can make that work. How can we make that work? And then I think there was a meeting where they said, oh, but your team needs to do this and they need to do this differently. And I was like, oh, definitely not. We are doing all we can, and now it's on you. And my team was so happy. They're like, finally, someone's got our back. You understand that we've done our best, and it really feels like we can trust you to really support us when it comes to it. So I think that's also really important to keep the team motivated. Okay, change of topic again. Last topic in this speed round of random things that Ella finds interesting. So this is more around building data teams and data functions. And there's probably, you could write 15 books on that, and it would all be interesting. So I focus on a very tiny thing that I've recently found particularly interesting, building a new team and kind of taking over an old team, and how that works well. Really what I feel like works best for me is building, having at least a couple of people on the team who are really super special unicorns, as I call them. And I think for me, most interesting over the last few months was that I would say I have at least 2 of them on my team, and they aren't the people you'd usually expect. One has just had a baby and he works only 3 days a week. And it's really interesting that it's not about the time commitment or how people are available, if they work from home, if they have a crying baby on them. He always, he calls in with his baby in the carrier, and I get just working with that person is amazing. And it's not about when they work, how they work, where they work from, if they need to take time off. It's much more about them understanding where we need to take the team, how to prioritize really well, and how to communicate. So I guess the things I'm looking for in my unicorns are that they really are the kind of people that challenge your thinking, that bring really fresh ideas to the table that you might never have thought about yourself, and that really, where you have that relationship where they listen to you and you really listen to them, and you work together making things better. And yeah, just kind of nice people, when you go to the office and you feel like you've hung out with friends rather than it feeling like work. I think that's really important too, where you just have a really good working relationship. And so the thing I've learned is let them do their thing. Absolutely. Again, the second unicorn on my team, she also for whatever reasons is not available to work all the time, but really like completely on her terms. She's in a different country, you know, but it really, for me, that was so interesting that it's not about like how many hours you put in, how available you are, but more your attitude to work and the value that you bring and the energy that you bring and the challenge that you raise, you know, when you walk in. Yeah, I think, as I said, really honest communication if it works and if it's not working. Also, you know, I think a tough lesson learned for every manager: if it's not working, it's not working. And you, of course, you know, you spend time, you try to make it better, but at some point, you know, it's also, you need to really focus on bringing people to an even better place. And if that is not in your, if you can't make that happen in your company, then it is good to realize. Really celebrate when they succeed, and again have their back. I think that's super important. And I think if you have a few people on the team like that really raise the bar for everyone else, that everyone enjoys working with, that bring the right energy, and always strive to be better, I think that really brings the whole team, that lifts the whole team up and makes my life so much easier because you know, I can lean back a bit. And I think that's it. As I said, very quickly put a lot of information in a short amount of time.
That was brilliant. Thanks, Ella. That was great from both you and Matt. So I guess now we just want to really kind of just open up the discussion, just to see if anyone had any specific questions they wanted to ask Matt and Ella. So the floor is everyone's now. I mean, we've got some questions or suggestions kind of in, I guess, from my point of view, what I...
Sorry, Jane, Robert's got his hand up very politely.
Oh, has he? Oh, okay. Sorry, Robert.
I wasn't sure on etiquette. It's been so long since I did it. Ella, Matt, great stuff. Thank you. Really interesting. Matt, I had a question for you, especially on in your first bullet point about making sure you're clear on the value case. I think one of the perennial problems for the data world and the analytics team is then attribution of the value that they do create. How do you monitor and actually keep a tally of the value in pounds ultimately, so that they get the credit, that the business can see the value the actual function's creating? What have you observed? What are the lessons in terms of how you attribute and how the challenges or the ease at which you're able to attribute the capabilities and the assets that they create, the products they create, back to the business case?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's really difficult, isn't it? Because, you know, I think this has been in my mind for so many years now, Rob. It's like, how do you, because data enables things, you know, the use of data enables things. So it's how you recognise the value that data brings in the use case, isn't it? And I think, you know, I think probably a good measure is I worked, a good example, I think, I worked in a utility company that had just deployed new systems, and basically it completely disrupted their landscape. And I was working with the leadership team to help them get the information that they needed to be able to kind of manage and drive the business and respond to all the challenges that they had. And what we had to do was basically just kind of break down what the questions were that they needed answering, and kind of, you know, get them in a sense of priority, and then gradually just take it bit by bit. So, you know, we responded to the first information point that they needed, and we gave them that information point and they could start to use it. You know, we then worked with them to say, look, is this working for you? And there was a bit of iteration, a bit of feedback. And then we moved on to the second point. And then gradually over the weeks and the months, the trust, that's the thing, Rob, actually. It's the measure, you see it in the trust that you get, the trust between the users of the information and you as the supplier of the information. You know, the more they trusted, the more kind of sponsorship I was given, the more, you know, the more funding and resources that was given to then generate more information. So it kind of, I think for me, actually, it's that measure of trust that brings it. And, you know, and it's, that's one of the big problems that's still faced now in 2022, 2023. But you know, a lot of senior people that use data and information don't really trust it. So if you can get them to trust it, then that kind of is a measure of success, I've found.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Lee, you've got a question? Your hand's up.
I do indeed. And I was being polite, taking my lead from Robert, which brings me. So, hello, Ella. I don't know if you remember, we met last year.
Of course, I do remember you.
Yes.
Hey.
So I'm interested. I'm interested in the cultural differences that you've seen, because both Deliveroo and WeTransfer, from my external point of view, would be very data-driven companies, anyways, very tech-led. And I found the comment about getting the push versus pull interesting when you bear in mind the whole thing about WeTransfer is transferring data, right? What sort of cultural differences have you found between the different organizations in terms of pushing the data agenda? And I guess, what have you been trying to focus on to change? Because I think we all have problems of culture sometimes, right? And it would be interesting to see in a tech data-led company, like, where do you see the pain and how have you tried to deal with it?
Yeah, interesting. It's funny that you think that WeTransfer is super data driven. I mean, maybe it's just a comparison with Deliveroo, which was really very data driven. It felt like I had to go back to the basics at WeTransfer. So the data strategy was really the immediate data strategy was very much focused on establishing the basics in a really solid way again. So I guess the kind of pillars that we had were like making sure we actually collect the right data that really can be valuable for the business. We really want to understand our customers. We want to make sure that all that data is easily accessible. That includes like tooling and so on, and that we have, you know, high operational excellence while we do it, and that we can really measure the performance. So it feels like a lot, but these were the 5 things that we really needed to focus on. And I think, you know, while it's now that 8 months or 9 months in, we've made a progress on a lot of these. We can kind of move on in the data maturity and do more things. But in terms of culture, I think to transform some of the people who are more like, you know, who aren't proactively reaching out to get more insights, but where you have to push more, as I said, it's really making sure that the insights are communicated in a way that sparks their interest, and then they want more. Before Deliveroo, I worked at The Guardian, and working with the editorial team was very similar. They were initially quite hesitant. You know, there's a data team and they tell us how good we write our articles, and it wasn't, you know, you weren't always welcome. So you start with like some good news. It's like, have you seen that your article last week was the best you've ever had? And, you know, it was the most read article this year on like politics in France or whatever. And then they're like, oh, that's interesting. Now tell me more, you know? And so maybe it comes back to what Matt says about establishing the trust. And then from the trust comes really a curiosity, and then you really have people ask for more as well.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Lisa, you've got your hand up. And welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I was a little bit late, but I think I may have a slightly new view on how we really deliver value with data, and how we can sort of build on that culture and trust mentality. Is, for me, I think sustainability is the undervalued and underthought for data leaders to really lean into. I think we're moving forward as a society, and people now are really interested. If you can show them how data is going to be of value to their carbon footprint, and how you can then bring their carbon footprint and go, well, actually, if you stop downloading data and storing it here, you're then making a positive impact for the company. So you're taking that behaviour away from about it just being the value of money, and you're extending their value drivers by making them look more holistically. And I also think it's a really good thing when you talk about behaviour change, is you've got more of an incentive if you go, if you do this, this and this, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint or improve biodiversity. It then has a much more tangible and passionate response than, oh, we'll deliver it you in sub-second processing time. But you can then start to go, why you don't do it that way, or why you do batch loads. You can really bring it down into your business. And I think we need to really embrace what ESG is delivering. And I know ESG is a very financial view of sustainability, but we have that big G, that governance part, which is going to demand that any data that's used to give a carbon footprint is auditable, is consistent, is trustworthy, is a fact. So I think for data leaders, we should be running around cheering the fact that sustainability and ESG is now part of business, because we're not going to be lone voices saying, oh my God, we need to improve the quality. We need to do this. It is out there, a legal requirement for us to come in and go, we've got to do this better.
I love everything that you've just said, Lisa. You know I would, because you're working with us on this very topic. And it's a very, very big passion of ours at Eden Smith. My question actually to Ella and to Matt, I don't mind who goes first, maybe Ella, you go first. Is sustainability part of your data strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa, for bringing it up. As I said, I tried to push a lot in 3 slides, but that is one that I haven't managed to put in. But certainly one of the metrics we look very closely at and that we're really trying to optimize. I don't know if you know, but WeTransfer is a B Corp, so we really care about the environment. We really try to give back a lot. So we constantly think about how can we, because as you know, we are a transfer business, so we store a lot of data, and storing data is not great for the environment. So we constantly think about what is our CO2 footprint and doing a lot of data analysis on how we can store files better in a more efficient way that has a good impact on the environment. So it's actually one of the key successes of my team in the last quarter, to find huge opportunities for us to do that better. And as a side effect, we're saving a lot of costs that way as well. But actually, that wasn't even the initial driver, right? We're doing the right thing. And I think we're doing the right thing for our customers, for the environment, and by accident also for the business.
Yeah,
that's great to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, really good.
And yeah, I've been focusing very heavily with real estate companies, and the bit I was talking about in terms of the complexities of master data and the value of some of the master data that underpins a lot of the business outcomes, getting the view of properties from a financial, operational, tenant and sustainability perspective, getting a single view of your property, it underpins the use cases around financial performance, pricing, tracking the welfare of your students, and the sustainability is very much on the same page as the rest of it now, which is great to see, because the data points you need to be able to measure the carbon footprint of your buildings, it hangs off the same structures as the financial measures and the tenant experience measures as well. So it all comes together quite nicely, which is really good. It's very much part of the narrative now, for sure.
Brilliant. It seems as if a lot of businesses are moving towards just embracing, I think, the sustainability, and I think it's something which everyone's going to have to start thinking about over the next year or so.
Yeah, and it's how it's that data to insight to action, isn't it? And it's how we as data leaders, to Lisa's point, drive the right behaviours and actions off the information that we're providing. I think we've definitely got a role to play there as advocates.
I think ultimately you as a community are the people that are going to be the board's going to be coming to say we need the data, right? And you're going to have to answer to that. So it's definitely a high priority, I think, for the data community or data leaders community. So I interrupted.
I'd also just add, rather than wait for somebody to come to you and ask for it, is we should be going to the C-suite and going, this is what we've got to do.
Yeah.
This is our thing that we have to do, and don't pass it to somebody else to go, somebody else collect the data and manage it. We are best placed to be doing that job, and that we can bring that data into all of our decision making frameworks.
Yeah.
Sorry, proactive. Cheer.
Jane, I think there's another hands up, I think.
Yeah, Nitin, you put your hand up. You've
Yeah,
been very
thanks, Jane.
patient.
Yeah, very patient. Yeah, it's my fault. I kind of stopped in there.
Very interesting, Matt. Thanks so much for the insights that you all have provided. Just in terms of y'all's perspective on organizations that have shifted from, like, especially from the startup to scale up stage, the one thing that I've identified is, where this challenge around getting to that single version of the truth, grappling with, at some point initially in that startup phase, of just getting information flowing into the business quite rapidly, and the challenge that then starts, kind of positioning around getting to a single version of the truth on that data modeling and really cleaning up structures. How have you all kind of viewed it in terms of carving out capacity for a dedicated team to run through those initiatives of longer term data maturity versus organically growing that into the team, into their practices, etc., and doing it more from a business as usual perspective?
Well, from my perspective, I've tended to go into. I generally start in sort of more established organisations that aren't, haven't, they've been on the journey already from startup to that scale, and they are operating at scale. And actually, the thing that's driven the change has been, from my experience, kind of like a regulatory change. So I work for a global kind of a product company in the healthcare sector, and a new European regulation forced the need to be able to develop a single view of product. And it started, and if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't be able to sell your products within Europe, basically. So it kind of got it got the senior management attention and sponsorship, and then that started to draw, that gave us the case for change to be able to come up with a robust, governed, controlled approach to master data management around the product. And then the other parts of the business could start to benefit from that when, in the context of their use cases. But for me, it kind of took that regulatory kind of mandate to kind of drive the sort of the change, really. I would love to actually have the opportunity to work and be able to do this organically, as you say, kind of like, so it's baked in from the very beginning, but I haven't had the opportunity in my career yet, so maybe that's something I need to look at moving forward.
I can maybe take that question too. So I guess that's when I joined WeTransfer, it felt like there was a real turning point where the thing that worked well, the company was at a certain scale, no longer served the business well. And as I said, our data infrastructure was just outdated. And while it made sense at that point to choose that infrastructure, we really had to transform how it's working. And I think it's really hard to make a case for change if I guess if the rest of the company, but especially the senior leadership team, does not feel the pain. But there came a point when they didn't have the reports, they couldn't make decisions as timely as they want, and we said, well, but that's because we are not quite our data infrastructure doesn't serve us and wouldn't allow us to grow with the ambitions that we have. And I think that was a very good case for us to build on that. But also, as I said in kind of my second point, it's very hard to pull that off while you do all the other things that the team is expected to do, right? It's like continuing your business as usual while also completely overhauling a lot of infrastructure is a very painful process and actually really requires so much planning, communication, it is quite a delicate exercise because you need to keep having the buy-in because it takes much longer than if you would just exclusively do that. So it's tricky. There's no simple answer.
But it varies in different businesses as well, I'm assuming. So Did anyone else have any other questions at all or thoughts? I just had one, Ella, and it was just when you were talking about kind of unicorns, you know, and the idea of needing a few unicorns kind of in your team. What would you say? What would you say is kind of the secret of attracting these unicorns?
Such a great question.
I think so. With one of them, it was at the company already. The other person I hired, it took a long time to find the right person for that job. And I think really, I always think you need to be a very, very good employer to attract good people. And that's really, so it's not a quick fix, not a quick win. You need to be a very, very good employer that people want to work for and where they feel happy and fulfilled. So that comes with a lot of things. It needs to be very clear what their opportunities are for growth in that business. Give them interesting challenges to work on and trust to deliver them. It needs to be a really good culture where they feel really welcome. And we just discussed, I think before the call, we have Fridays off in summer. So another good selling point is like, why wouldn't you want to work here?
We're all coming to work for you.
So I think it's just like always thinking, how can we make sure we are a really good place for talent to grow and develop and feel very fulfilled. And as I said, have also their life-work balance really well balanced. And I think that's the way I managed to attract people, where I was like, you know, we might not be you know, the Googles and Facebooks, but you will have a much happier life if you work for us than you know, being expected to maybe work every weekend and every evening.
Especially, I think, in this market at the moment where it's so candidate driven. Well, this is what we find from a staffing perspective. You know, it's all of these good things, you know, additional to the type of role that you're offering and different kind of projects that you can get your team on. You usually find they're the type of businesses and clients that are succeeding in attracting kind of the top talent. So definitely. Lee, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to just say, Ella made a point in there. She said, that is how I attracted people. So I agree with you. The company culture has to facilitate it, but it really is down to, I think, us as individuals, right? So when Ella was doing her presentation at the start, she talked about how she's got a guy, he's had a baby, he's only working a few days a week, she's fine with that. You know, I think the reality is, if you look at creatives, right? Because that's what we're talking about. You can be a technical creative as well as a painter. I think they are always a little eccentric. And if you indulge the eccentricities, then you'll get the most out of them. But I think a lot of traditional managers don't like that. And so I think one of the keys is always trying to sell not just the place, right, and career prospects or free food or whatever. I mean, my son's doing an internship at Amazon, and all he keeps talking about is the free breakfast, right? It's he lived in Yorkshire for like 4 years, and it rubbed off on him. He is so tight, it's not funny, right? So it's like food is enough to stay at Amazon. But having said that, you know, he does talk about his team leader and how nice the guy is, and how, you know, he lets him off early on a Friday, to Ella's point, and stuff like that, whereas he knows some of the other teams aren't like that. So they want to retain him, and it's interesting because they're putting him with people who actually, I guess, are kindred spirits to a way. And if you can't be a kindred spirit, you just have to support them and give them that space, right? And I do have a question, which is for Jez. What the hell's in that tank behind you? Because it like it's filled with water.
Well, we're going a little bit off topic here, but in that tank is a bearded dragon.
Wow.
I could go and get him for you if you want, but his name is Derek.
Oh, we gotta get the dragon while somebody else asks a question.
Do you want me to get him? Well, you don't. So it's not.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Of course.
Go for it.
He's actually got a real personality. It's like his second dog.
We're getting a puppy on Saturday. I'll show the puppy at the next one.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
So he's lovely. He's a good boy.
Oh.
He's got little arms, little hands.
Cool.
Yeah,
I
it's a
wonder
good
if
lad.
Derek's thinking, I was fine. Why have you
Yeah,
grabbed me
he's probably
out
wondering
there
why I got him out.
today?
But no, he's good. He's a good pet. I was actually just, excuse, I never thought Derek would be coming out on one of our C-suite webinars.
Yes,
But
but you
stranger
invited.
things have happened, right? No, just actually to that point, one of the things that Ella brought up about the unicorn is that she mentioned it being an extension of her brain. And I'd never really thought about it like that before, but you do need those in your business. And I feel like I have a couple in our business, and I'm sure a few of us do, but you don't really think about it like that when you go to recruit. And of course, that's why it's so hard, because you can't articulate that very well on a specification, right? And recruitment companies, unless they're telepathic, are not really going to be able to get that either. So I guess that's why it takes so long. And makes it quite difficult. There's been some really, really good points. I'm conscious of time. I've only got a few minutes left. Does anyone else have any questions? No, I think I wanted to I noticed there was a couple of things that both Matt and Ella said as part of their conversation. One was how you, Ella, are improving the data literacy and for the culture, from a cultural perspective. The question I had was that you said you share through facts and workshops where the data is, what data sources we have, what we do with it, how much we've got. Do you upskill everybody in the whole company?
Yeah.
And
it's a lot.
I was going to say, because if you're a big business, that takes a long time, right? So you do that through workshops. And I guess my next question is, do you take people from different business units to do that, or do you do it per business unit?
So it depends on the workshop. So by the way, even though I run and prepare the workshops, I have the internal comms team helping me. We have a learning and development team as well, and the HR team for onboarding. We all work together on delivering those workshops, because it is a lot of work. But I do think that there's a big return on investment, really upskilling everyone in the company. But yeah, it depends. So for example, I ran a workshop with the ads team, on experimentation, and I really tailored the content on like how you could do experiments with advertisement. But for other areas, I have everyone all together. Some things are virtual, others are very hands-on, like actually building your own Tableau dashboards, and there we're in person. Some are in the US, so it's very a mix, but it needs to work for the people. But it is a lot of work, yeah.
And underpinning all of that, I'm guessing, which I got from Matt's presentation quite big as well, is this comms plan. I've actually not seen it on a deck before. I've seen like communication is important and key, but not that you actually have a communication plan that says this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and everybody's going to know about it.
I think just building on that, I'd like to get people from different areas in together, because especially where I know a consumer of information, I try and get them to meet the people who create that bit of data in the system, so that they can look at each other and say, look, I consume the information you generate, so I need you to do it to the right standard. Otherwise, it's going to impact my what I do. So I try and join the dots, and that's why I mean, like the different views of data from different perspectives. It needs that to kind of for people to get the message and to realise that the change is needed. So yeah, I try and do that, Jez, too.
Yeah, no, it's come across clear from both of you. Conscious of time, obviously we're coming up to 1 o'clock now. Does anybody have any final questions?
No, I feel we should have the pips now.
The pips?
The pips, the on the hour pips. Beep, beep.
So just so if it's okay, Jane, you okay if I just summarize a couple of key points here before we wrap up?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, some key takeaways I've seen there. So sharing all the information across the business, I think bringing people on that journey through facts workshops and the communication plan, I think is a great takeaway that I've certainly brought. Very interesting point around the unicorns, and a big example from both of you about the communication is key. Another, I think, to land on quite interesting around the sustainability piece. A big priority for everybody's data strategy. I do think this is the community of people that should drive that and push it. Really pleased to hear that it's already taking place, certainly what you're doing there as well. So it was nice to hear that, but I think it's an urgent thing. But a massive thanks to you, Jane, because you put this C-suite community together and this and have arranged this this webinar, and to you, Krista, as well for helping. And obviously for you, Ella, thanks so much for agreeing to present today. Really big pleasure listening to you as always. And to you, Matt, thanks so much for playing part of it. We will be running these. I'm not quite sure how often, Jane. Is it going to be quarterly?
I think so. Or if there's a lot of interest, and
yeah,
you know, we can run them.
We can run them quarterly.
So we'll see. Yeah,
it would be key. We would be keen to get everybody's feedback,
yeah.
And also, you know, if there's any specific topics that you think that we would like to, but would be valuable for us to discuss as we move through the year. This runs in conjunction with the Data Leaders Lounge that Ian Smith runs as well, and the Data Professionals Lounge. So there'll be a few more thought leadership type activities through 23. But thanks so much for joining, all of you. All right. Hopefully the sun's shining where you are. It is where I am. And thanks for meeting Derek. I just really didn't expect that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a lovely day.
Thanks
Thank you
everyone.
all. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye, guys. Bye.